Hello and welcome to today's video. I'm a little late on this trend, but I've had a lot of content to produce over the last little while. But there was a bit of a trend here on YouTube and other platforms about the 8 pen questions, and I really wanted to cover them with my answers today. So I'm going to go into a small amount of detail on each. I'll try and keep it as brief as possible. But I really wanted to share my answers because I'm in a bit of a state of transition at the moment, both in terms of my life and my pen collection. So I thought this was a really great opportunity. So the first question is, when and how did your fountain pen journey begin? Okay, so this takes us back into my teens. I was, I've spoken about this a number of times, so I'll sort of just recap a lot of it. When I was a teenager, I won a competition, a letter writing competition, and the first prize was a Parker Sonnet fountain pen. I loved it. I was always a bit of a stationery nerd. I was always really looking forward to back to school time and, you know, having nice pens and pencils and things for my desk at school. But when I had this fountain pen, I knew it was special and I knew I connected with it in a different way. I only used the cartridges that came with it, and once they were gone, I didn't really know what to do. You know, so it kind of got put away and lost until recently. So that was when it started. Then through uni, I just basically used really nice ballpoints and roller balls. I was still very particular about what I used. And then after uni, started to get back into fountain pens after a trip to China where I bought some. And then I was gifted a few, and it sort of snowballed from there. So for the last, I say I've been a fountain pen user for 20 years, and probably for about the last 10, I've been using them much more frequently. The second question is, what were my go-to fountain pen inks at the beginning, and what are they now? Well, I'm going to take this as that sort of 10-year period where I started to get back into fountain pens, and I'm particularly going to aim it around 2017 when I started to really fall down the rabbit hole, as opposed to just being a user but being a bit of a collector and all of that. So the inks I was using prior to that were really basic inks. It was Parker Quink, it was I think there was Lamy Black in the mix at that point, and then of course whatever cartridges and stuff came with the pens. Then as I started to delve in a little bit more, the first thing I discovered was Robert Oster, who was at that point was relatively new in the pen world and was like bursting into fame for his Fire and Ice ink. And I got my hands on a few of his inks from a retailer in Australia that unfortunately no longer exists. And then from there, I just expanded and blew up myself as well. Then once I found Diamine, it all kind of snowballed. The first Robert Oster inks I really fell in love with were Forest Green, Maroon 1782, whatever number it is, and Cafe Crema. And from there, it's been a, you know, it's been a lifelong journey. I discovered Robert Oster Tranquility quite early on, and then I've always had a bit of a thing for purples and blue blacks. So Diamine 1864 Blue Black was an early winner. Now, my taste in terms of colours hasn't really changed much. I really like earthy reds and greens. I love that sort of turquoisey, tealy colour family of something like Tranquility, and I love purples and blue blacks. Probably my most go-to ink now is Diamine Oxford Blue, as well as Robert Oster Tranquility. And more I'm falling in love with the Sailor Studio inks, and I've got a large collection, well not a large collection, but a healthy little collection of Ackerman inks as well, like number 18 Garuda Rude, 14 Simplicities Violette. Just, I love them. The third question is, how have your pen and ink taste changed over the years? Well, I think in terms of my pens, one thing I've always gone for is I want a pen that writes well. I don't collect pens to put them up on a shelf, to have them on display. I get them to use them. And even my most high-end pens, my Mont Blancs, my, you know, Leonardo's, my Viscontis, things like that, they are all there to be used. Used. There's been a few pens that have stayed really up at the top of my collection for the last sort of 5 or so years. Things like the Lamy 2000, the Pilot 8 Custom 23. They are always going to be there. The Visconti Homo Sapiens, once I got that pen, there was no turning back. But something I'm looking for more and more now is simplicity. I want pens that just write well and do the things they're designed to do, that don't cost an arm and a leg, but are just brilliant writing utensils. And so something like the Gravitas Pen's Delrin, there's nothing particularly fancy about that pen. It's just beautifully constructed from a great material and it writes like a dream. The Esterbrook Camden, the same thing. I still say the Lamy 2000 and the Pilot Custom 823 fall into this. A little bit more expensive, the Custom 845 is a great example. That pen feels great in the hand, it writes beautifully on the page. I wouldn't say my tastes have become more expensive or that I'm discounting lower end pens, because I have a number of things like the Hongdian C1, which is on my desk a lot. I still use Lamy Safaris and Kaweco Sports on a daily basis. I just think that what I'm looking for in those mid to high end pens is a consistency and a reliability. And so there are certain brands and certain styles of pen that I just avoid. The fourth question is, are there pens and inks that you are yet to try but would love to? Absolutely. I'm a big fan of Esterbrook. I love the Camden and the Estie. I would really love to try the acrylic version of the Camden. I'd love to try that Raven Estie pen. I think the feel of that in the hand would be really beautiful. And that little Esterbrook J that they produced, I would love to have a try of that. There are a couple of Pilot pens I'm super keen to get my hands on. So a couple of vintage ones and a couple of sort of more modern pens. I've just recently purchased an E95S. I've had the Elite for a while, which has a slightly slimmer profile and an 18 karat gold nib. And the E95 is a little thicker and has a 14 karat gold nib. So I'm looking forward to trying that. There's a couple of Gravitas pens that I'm really looking forward to trying, and a couple of those are on their way to me now. So there's lots of things like that. There's no, I've got a Grail pen, of course, which I'll come to in a minute. But there's no super like high-end pens. Yeah, I'd love a M1000 from Pelikan. I'd love to try Conid. There's a bunch of things like that. I'd also really like to try an Otto Hut pen or Otto Hut. They look amazing. Just a little out of my personal price range just at the moment. I also want to try as many custom pen makers as I can. There are so many pen makers around the world who make beautiful, beautiful pens, and that is really interesting to me now. I will always buy nice mass-produced pens if they are good, but I'm really keen to try more custom-made pens too. In terms of inks, I'm really loving exploring the Sailors Ink Studio line, sort of 5x5 at a time at the moment. Buying samples of them, and the ones I love I just buy a bottle of. So I think I'm going to end up with quite a collection of those. There's a number of brands around the place. Ink Institute I'm particularly interested in right now, as I am in looking at more of the Vinter and Tono and Lims and things like that inks. I think that they make some interesting stuff. I would say I'm not interested in shimmer inks that much. Like, I review them occasionally. I know that they're popular and people love them, but for my own personal use, good earthy colors that perform well, that's my my desire. And then question number 5, what is your Holy Grail pen? Okay, this is an easy one for me to answer, but I'm going to back it up ever so slightly. I've been really lucky to be able to get my hands on a couple of my Grail pens as I have been able to. And there's been a couple of pens that have, really stood out in that way. The Montblanc JFK, the Visconti Homo Sapiens, absolutely. And there's been a couple of pens that have fallen in and out of Grail range for me. There was a Santini pen that I was looking at for a while, and while I would love to try that, I think I'm setting my sights on something that has been in the back of my mind since it was released, and that is the Visconti Brunelleschi. So this is a fountain pen made with a resin-infused terracotta that uses the same terracotta as Brunelleschi used in the dome of the cathedral in Florence. It is a beautiful pen. It's lovely lines, very typically Visconti in every way, but beautiful. And I think that that pen, with the texture of it, and I've held it, I've looked at it, I almost bought one at the Melbourne Pen Show last year. It was an extra fine, which is just a little finer than I want. I'm happy with fine or medium, so I almost bought it, but I think, that's my Grail pen at the moment. Now, question 6 is not an easy one to answer. The question is, how many pens do you currently have? So last time I catalogued my pens, which was before I started selling a few pens off, I had around 450 fountain pens. Now, some of those are high-end. Some of those are pens that I can't justify the amount of money I paid for them now. And then some of them are low-end, Jinhaos and Hongdowns and things like that. So it's the gamut. It's from $5 to considerably more. Let's just say that. Right now, I have my pens separated into 3 separate sort of collections. I have one collection which is pens that I am selling. I have one set that is pens that are going into storage. At the moment, I'm moving house, and my stuff's going to be in storage for a handful of months. So there's a bunch of pens that are going into storage. Then there's my pens I don't want to be away from. Now I'm going away on tour for a couple of months in a while, and for that I'll just take 2 or 3 pens. I have no issue with that, and they're going to be very utilitarian, user-friendly pens that travel well. That's fine. Then I've got a 36 pen box, which is 3 drawers. That is like the core of my collection. That is the pens that I love, that I will probably never get rid of. So it's hard to say. Do I have 36 pens? Or do I have roughly 150 pens, including those ones that are going into storage? So, as I said, I've sold a bunch already, and I've still got a bunch to sell. I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to go about selling them. I've tried a few different ways. It's just all a bit too much work. I may end up just putting 100 pens on, Gumtree or Facebook Marketplace or something and saying, make me an offer and the best offer wins kind of thing. There's nothing particularly expensive in there. They're all everyday use pens, as I said, like Kavekos, Lamis, that kind of stuff, as well as some sort of Chinese pens, and then a few things like there's a Pinida pen in there and a few bits and pieces like that. But, is it 36? Is it 100 and 150? Roughly, it's somewhere between there. I think the core of my collection is what I consider to be the pens I love and use, and those ones that are going to storage, they're like either pens I've been sent for review or pens that I don't use that much but I feel I should keep. Maybe one day I'll make a video about exactly what is in what. Okay, I'm going to read question 7 because there's a few elements to it. And by the way, this is a executive series notebook from My Paperclip Australia. Love, love, love these. Use it for everything. Okay, question 7. Do you have a limit on pens or inks in your collection? Is it a number? Is it a feeling? When do you know when you have reached your maximum? Okay, this is another one that's hard to answer. I don't necessarily have a limit, except for the fact that that pen box I use holds 36 pens. And if one of those is going to leave that, it has to be, superseded by a pen that is better than it. So, for instance, there was a TWSBI Eco in there. I love the TWSBI Eco model. It was the plain black one with a medium nib. Love it. Then that indigo bronze version came out. And so black went out, indigo bronze went in. It's that kind of swap out situation. There's been a number of pens in there that, for whatever reason, have been moved out and sort of replaced. So in that's the only place I have a limit on it. All my other fountain pens fit into one other box in pen trays in that. I've got these pen trays that hold 20 pens, and there's a number of those in there. There's about 10 or 11 of them in there. And I just store all my pens in that. I don't keep boxes. I don't do anything like that. So those of you who are going to be buying pens from me, you will not get the original box, except for a few sort of unique circumstances. So really, I don't have a limit to pens. There's a limit I want to have, and I would love to get it down to just that 36 pens. Not sure how possible that is doing what I do with the reviews and everything. I'm constantly being sent pens. I get things in the mail. I have to buy things. That's part of the job. In terms of ink, this is harder. I've also culled down my ink collection. So I think it was 600 bottles of ink. That's ranging from the 30ml diamines to Robert Osters to, Toucher and Colour Traveller and Mont Blanc, everything. Just like a complete gamut of bottles of ink. And a lot of that is going to storage, and a lot of that, only a small amount of bottles, maybe 11 or 12, are coming with me. That includes a few Sailor, a few Pilot, a couple of Lamy, and a few Diamine and Robert Oster. That's basically what I'm keeping. And I'm keeping those both for writing, but also for art, I use my ink with my art process as well. I draw, I sketch, I do watercolors with it. So having a nice little range of colors on hand is kind of part of that as well. So I collect samples of inks. As I said, with Sailor Studio, Ink Studio, I buy 5 or 6 samples at a time, sometimes more. I swatch them all up, I write with them, and the ones I love, I buy a bottle of. It's a nice way of going about it. And I've always kind of done that. With Diamine, I just bought the 30ml bottles straight up. And then, you know, if I like that ink, if I work through enough of it, I buy the 80ml bottle. Robert Oster, I just generally buy bottles. It's easy. But other brands, I'll buy samples. If I like them, I'll think about getting a bottle. If not, a general sample's 2 mils, and that's enough for a couple of pen fills, or, you know, like one fill, half fill of some big, you know, big pens. But it's a good enough experience of the ink, and you can get to know it. It's not quite enough for me to review the ink. To review the ink, I generally need a bottle. It doesn't have to be a big bottle, but a bottle. So yeah, I don't really have a cap on that. I just enjoy ink. But in the end, you know, I use only a handful of inks, maybe, well, a big handful, but maybe 10 or so bottles of ink on a regular basis. And then the last question, number 8, is, consequently, what would you do if a new pen or ink came along? I'd buy it. Not straight up. If it's a pen I'm interested in, if it's an ink color I'm interested in. As I said, you know, I'd like to get done at 36 pens. For something new to come in, something would have to go out. So I'm pretty picky now in what I buy. As I said, I get sent things for review. Companies and manufacturers and retailers send me products occasionally to review, and so I get sent a lot of things to try out, and that helps me decide what my tastes are and what I enjoy. So I have a regular supply of pens and inks that are coming in. But for me to buy something, it has to be special. It has to be unique. It has to do something or be something that inspires me, which is why some of these Sailor Studio inks are getting a bit of attention, and the Ackerman inks, I think they're just beautifully made inks. They're not out there colors, there's no sheen, there's not a whole lot of shading, anything like that. They just perform well and they're beautiful. So that's why I get them. In terms of pens, my pen purchases this year have been a little more limited. I tried to limit myself into how many I buy, just because I've got this move coming up and I don't want to keep, you know, loading up. But the pens I have bought have been considerable or custom, or they have been pens I've been interested in, and when they've been released, I've been able to get my hands on them. I don't automatically buy everything. Like, I'm not buying all the special or limited edition Lamis that come out. There are a few I'm buying this year. I'm in a fortunate position to be able to know very much ahead of time, you know, the release schedule for Lamy, and there are some exciting things coming up. So a few of those will be added to my collection. I know that already, but I think just not buying impulsively has actually helped me in this hobby. Learning what I want. I'm not in that exploratory stage anymore. I'm not in that get everything and see what I like. I kind of know what I like and I know what's going to work for me. And so I still watch reviews, I still read reviews, I still look at what is actually happening with the pen, you know, who made the nib, what nib size is it, what's the filling system, you know, all that kind of thing. You know, what's the material, you know, how durable is it, what does this line up with the price point, and that helps me make the purchases that I want to make. And yeah, so I don't automatically buy everything. I don't feel I need to anymore, but I do enjoy what I buy, and I try and make the purchases I do make be pens that are going to be in my collection and not just used, reviewed, and moved on. Yeah, so I hope that answers the 8 questions for you. Hope you found this video interesting and useful. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. All that kind of stuff, comments, all that, they all help the algorithm and help me continue to grow this channel. So a big thank you. I've recently surpassed 10,000 subscribers. I'd like to keep growing that. So share the word, pass it around, all that kind of stuff. A big thank you to the companies that have supported me over the years. If you'd like to support me, I would love to hear from you. There are so many ways you can, and it helps make this channel possible. So thank you for watching, and until next time, I'll talk to you later.